The great Roadhog Rework Revert has put him in dumpster tier as far as I'm concerned. Don't get me wrong, it's probably the healthiest thing for the character, because a lot of players are going to say good riddance. And on top of that, we'll break down later, I did analyze 6 playing Hog, which now, because a lot of the old techniques that were utilized to master Hog before are very relevant again, he looks like he's just riding a bike, picking up where he left off many years ago. So now to have that same level of Hog performance, you're going to have to master the techniques to not get absolutely clowned like I have been. But first, let's talk about the patch. They put out an emergency buff to Roadhog because he was underperforming so much. They improved his reload time from 1.75 seconds to 1.5, small buff there. Shotgun pellet damage increased from 6 to 6.5, which is significant. A lot of pellets in that scrap gun, and the secondary fire initial volley can now crit targets again. That's before it bursts out. It's still a negligible amount. You don't want to actually hit them with the actual projectile part of it. You would prefer it to pan out at the perfect kill shot range. We'll talk about the secondary fire more in a moment. And Chain Hook's impact damage is increased from 5 to 25. Now, I never liked this version of Hog because this is the Hog that we had in Overwatch 1, who was a very feast or famine type character. And let's face it, most of the time when he was on your team, it was famine. So oddly, that creates a bit of a different issue where if you have a character that's popular to be picked, but very hard to execute, he can be annoying to play with. But Overwatch 2 has a lot of tanks that feel that way. So overall, if it takes more finesse to get value out of Roadhog, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. However, I will say that I find it a little bit strange that somehow the community thought that it was a terrible thing to have to outplay a trap. And now we'd much rather have a character that has a one-shot kill on certain squishies at the perfect ideal alt fire range. I think both are pretty hard to play around. And at least for me personally, especially when Winston had the anti-deployables perk, especially when it got buffed, outplaying Roadhog's trap felt incredibly fair. Whereas when I'm a squishy walking around the corner into a perfectly lined up alt fire volley that rips my head off, I'm not so happy about that. The Pigpen version of Roadhog made him very consistent and almost too consistent. So much so that if a noob like me tries to go play the Revert Hog, I can't confirm any kills anywhere. It's actually comical to me to see so many targets get hooked into what I expect to be lethal range just to have them get healed in time or for me to feel like I'm not damaging them at all. Now, from a strategy point of view, I think this is okay, because the thing that I've noticed with the new Hog is that you still feel pretty good against most tanks, because adding that reliable hook CC and wide pellet damage of his primary fire, you're still going to pound into a tank like you did before. So unfortunately, like, that is probably what most players will still be able to actualize on Hog. Oddly enough, it's the tankier version of squishies that you're going to have more of a problem against, thus meaning you're really going to get bullied on Hog until you reach a certain level with him. Probably fair, all things considered. For the average player, I think try to keep in mind to have the ideal team comp if you're struggling with Hog, because not only do you want to have targets that you can hook, you're going to have some follow-up if you're not a master at Hog. So for example, if you have too high of healing supports, like a Lifeweaver on your team, who's just pumping healing into you, that might not be enough utility. But if, say, your Mercy damage amps you when you hook somebody in, or maybe your Ana follows up, or your team just in general follows up, hooking something into their line of sight, as opposed to expecting to hook them into a trap, Pigpen doing the work for you, that could still work. And considering how many crowd controls you can stack on a team comp, I think Hog, for the average player, looks more viable in that scenario. But if you want to master the Hog rework, let's take a look at a few clips from 6, who, funnily enough, in just a matter of a few minutes of a game of King's Row, shows us lots of things we can learn from immediately. 1, prioritize hooking in the mobility class of characters at 225 health. Keep in mind, Sojourn just got classified as that in the recent nerf. That alone will be an easier time for you. Granted, those are the harder hooks to hit because they have mobility, but if you do hit them, you're more likely to get the one shot anyway. But there's lots of other cool things 6 does, such as when he does hit a hook on some targets, he will step into the shot first before pulling the trigger so that the big, wide hitbox can close the distance a little bit because where the hook actually places the target really matters. It's something that they changed, I think, like 1,000 times, honestly, through Overwatch 1 and 2. But in a few instances here, he takes the time to step forward before he even shoots. Against squishies, against the tank, very effective to make your damage a lot more potent. And one last tech, and I can't believe how many examples are in one little frame of clip here. Just shows you the mastery 6 has over the character. But you also can turn the target, which is particularly important against tanks. And there's even gimmicky ways that you can get them around corners in certain scenarios as well. But especially with the new overhealth mechanic, the farther distance they travel, the more overhealth you'll get. And then as well, you're just getting them farther away from their team and closer to yours. And one last general tip is to shoot the alt fire at that ideal range before you throw the hook on certain targets to whittle them down. The combination of all of these, if you execute those, then Hog kind of looks the same. 6 makes him look like one of the most lethal characters in the game, but in my hands, I can't get a kill, even after they buffed him. The way that I've gotten Roadhog to work the easiest is when I was able to kite away from a brawl style comp and get my alt fire to connect with squishies. And yes, the hook was impactful, but I would say probably equal value was the alt fire whittling them down. When I play up against the Roadhog, I feel like that alt fire is just a bit inconsistent and hard to know how to take space against. Maybe we just all have to learn how to outplay it again. But I can't help but feel that we traded one BS mechanic for a different one. But hey, if the player base is happy, then I'm happy. So at least for me, I'm not a fan of the alt fire really. And you have to be, and you have to master it in order to really get the most value out of the character because it's so much of his power. It rewards a very specific distance control and changes which positions you're actually good in. Because whereas the old rework Hog, you could probably get the trap in a lot of creative positions in order to go get a hook and then the burst combo to find the elimination. If you're playing around the alt fire, well, it's only good in certain spots, which makes Roadhog's positioning a lot more predictable, which at a higher tier of play, when I watch 6 play, because he uses cover so incredibly well, he looks like he's mastering the flow of the map. And all in all, that's probably a good thing. Roadhog now in this version, with how much expertise you're going to need, feels more aligned with like the Doomfist class character, not because he's a diver, but because you kind of need to know and master some very technical skills to even get the character to work at all. And considering he has so much burst potential, that's probably a healthier thing. The only problem is that there's other characters like Junker Queen or Orisa that I think do similar jobs with a lot more forgiving gameplay, which is why I'll be going to play them instead of Roadhog. But for a bigger question, like what do we actually want to reward in the game? Do we actually want a world where Orisa is just objectively easier, more reliable for more players than Roadhog? Is that a better world to be in? I'm not sure what I think. I don't mind countering Orisa myself, but whereas Roadhog had his cooldown cycle that could take over the game, similar to the way that a Doomfist might, Orisa's a lot more predictable in what she can do, and in my opinion, more boring to interact with, even going against. Now, maybe it's a playstyle adaptation that when players realize you have to play more like 6 in order to get Hog to even function at all, the player base will evolve and Hog's performance is going to go up over time. But at least in these early stages, the quote counter picks against Hog feel a lot easier to play because so many decisions and plays he might go for, sort of like when I was up against a Mauga on Shambali or me playing Queen against this Hog here on Runasapi, the Hog player in both cases was expecting to get value from a play that just no longer works anymore. Whereas when I watch 6 play, he's way more passive, like shockingly passive. And the positions he'll commit to are very limited because he knows if he overextends for a second, he can blow up. For those of you that hated Roadhog, this might sound like music to your ears because a Hog balanced so that he isn't forgiving and will hard throw if he's too forward out of position, that might be Christmas come early for some of you. You might even stop banning him at the ban phase. Whereas characters that have more mobility options or more of a moderate balance to them, like Junker Queen, has a shout and a heal and a CC, but it's not as devastating as Hog. She's kind of like the balanced version of Hog, I guess. Or Orisa, who can reposition and is also tanky with a stun. I guess players just don't mind those characters having a similar but toned down function as opposed to the burst impact of Hog. But let me know what you think about Roadhog and Season 18 in the comment section down below. I'll remind you that you can submit in your own gameplay replays to either get reviewed if you're looking for coaching or just to share with me something cool or interesting that happened in your games to be included in content and future videos. You can submit in a replay code by clicking the Google Form submission page linked in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when my videos come out.